Hello.
Hello.
How's tricks?
Tricks are good. How about you?
I'm so good. I am just so good. I'm so good. I'm riding the wave. I'm riding the
Nice.
wave. Peaks and valleys. I'm riding the peak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Riding the peak. Can I tell you what my morning consisted of this morning?
Please do.
So I think we've talked about this before. Sometimes I'm at the house by myself in Cape Cod, and I live like a college co-ed when I'm by myself. I go back to all my secret single behavior. For those of you who watch Sex and the City, that was a great episode. Anyway, so there's stuff everywhere. It's not dirty. It's not dirty. It's just cluttered. So it probably took me like 90 minutes to run around because Danny's coming. And I don't think it's very nice for him to walk into a house that looks like it's been ransacked by the police. So I spent all morning furiously running around cleaning up. And I'm like, Nancy, why do you do this? It's like I go into slobola mode and then I whip it back into shape right before he gets here. What is my problem?
No, maybe you just maybe the slobola mode does something for you.
I'll tell you, it does. I rebel.
Yeah.
It's how I rebel against the man.
That's right.
I don't know what man in particular, but it's how I get back. I'm like, I'm not going to pick that up. I'm going to like literally I had a big bundle of hanging clothes. They've been sitting on my couch for 3 days. Like I live here. Why wouldn't I just pick them up and put them upstairs?
No, because you don't have to.
Because no one's the boss of me. And if I want to just leave them, I'm going to leave them.
That's right.
Okay. So that's what I did this morning.
Oh. All right.
By the way, Danny listens to this podcast and he's on to me. He knows I do this. So it's okay.
Right.
Just saying. We're gonna talk about my favorite topic today. What do you want to talk about your morning first? I feel like I came in guns blazing because I'm active.
It was good. I got up. I went for a walk.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a pretty normal, easy morning.
Great.
Say, no qualms.
No bombs.
Nope.
No.
Oh, I had my house clean this morning.
Oh, it's not the best. Love it.
I love it. And so I did. That's so interesting because I did have to take about 10, 15 minutes to like pick up, right? I think that's the thing I love the most about having somebody who comes to clean, which is a huge luxury. And I would give up almost everything else to keep that.
I'd give up oxygen for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it makes me pick up. It makes me get like organized, which I like.
I love it. And it only took you 15 minutes. It took me 90.
Yeah.
Okay. That's neither. We're not going to judge. We're going to allow ourselves some grace, aren't we?
That's right. I'm going to give you some grace, Nancy. You do you.
Thank you, Beth, for giving me grace.
Rob, and then clean up after yourself. It's fine with me.
Totally fine. It's funny that you bring up grace because that's what we're talking about today.
It's the topic.
And interestingly enough, Beth, I don't know if you know this. So Beth and I go back and forth several times about what we want to talk about. And I kind of sprung this one on her and I wasn't sure how it was going to land because we have all these things in the pipeline to talk about. And I'm like, well, about grace. And she loved it. So I'm psyched, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. And my husband, I got him into the whole grace thing during the vid because he would come home from work and he'd be like, these people, they this and they that and they this and they that. And I said, you know what? You have no idea what their daily anxiety level is. You have no idea what they're going home to.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea, about so many things of somebody else's life. And you are in a really great place.
Mm-hmm.
We have a home. We have food on the table. We have all the things we need right now. And maybe that person doesn't. I said, you come home and we have these conversations. And so it became this thing of giving people grace and giving people grace. And I think a lot of people had that at that point. But then I think there was this transitional piece of coming out of the vid and where people got very, I don't say self-involved, because I think we all had to figure out how are we transitioning back into life as whatever normal is for people. But now I think that transitional period is past, and I don't see people giving grace the way that they did.
It's so interesting you say that. Yesterday, 2 days ago, I spoke at a conference in Boston. Shout out, I love speaking in Boston. To anybody who's planning a conference in Boston, it's my favorite thing to do because I'm from Boston. So anyway, and I was asked from the audience, there was Q&A at the end, and I was asked from the audience, this was a group of sales enablement people, managers. So sales enablement, for those of you who don't know, it's similar to sales support. So they enable the sales process. They are the nuts and bolts behind sales. And they're the core, they're the backbone of the sales organization. So this woman asked me, what would you do, or how would you handle it if, how do you think we can be better at enabling the salespeople that depend on us? What do you think we can do differently? And I had to think about it. It was a really good question. And I said, I would approach them with grace. And here's what I mean by that. Sales enablement people have a very specific skill set. And the people they support, the sales managers, sales executives, sales leaders, they don't have that skill set. Or if they do, they don't like to use it. So oftentimes someone would come to me that's better at something than I am, and they would say, hey, here's something you can do that can make you better. And I might take all of it. I might take some of it. I definitely am not going to do it the way they want me to. So what I said to this woman was, allow them some grace to take what works for them and then leave behind the rest. So they're not going to take all of your advice. They're not going to do everything you want them to do. And know that you're giving them everything you can, and whatever they take is going to work for them. So give them that grace. So at the end of the conference, the MC, who was awesome, one of the MCs, he talked about his 3 takeaways, and one of them was grace. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. It was an ad lib. So I spoke with him afterwards, and we started talking about it. And I said, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I wasn't planning on that. And he said, I think that we all allowed a lot more room for grace during COVID, or maybe I said that. And he said, and I think it's gotten worse. Mm-hmm. He said, I think now that people are back, it is even worse, meaning people have no time, no tolerance, no grace. And I equated it to everyone's back to gathering their nuts, right? It's like squirrels, and they're gathering their nuts, and they're getting ready for the winter or for whatever is coming next. And everybody's back to being focused on them and their world and everything that's going on in their life. I'm not. And I think it's probably because I just spent 2 weeks in the Holy Land, and I'll get to that in a second. But I think that's one of the things I took from COVID with me is back off, sister. Just back off and understand that everybody's got a reason for what they're doing, and chillax. So when you said you feel like since the vid, and by the way, when you said the vid, I was like, does she mean video? Like, what does she mean? She means COVID. Took me a minute to figure it out.
Yeah.
It took me a minute. I don't feel it. So I don't feel it in myself, but I do see it. I see people being short with people, and I see people just going in for the kill and attack first and ask questions later. And I'm like, everybody, hold up. Can we pause and allow a little more grace in our lives?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I feel there's definitely a lot of impatience out there. Definitely people getting triggered by stuff easier. And I think one of the things that we have to do, so I wrote 2 things down just right now is, other people are not necessarily going to do the things that you would or the way that you want.
Right.
And they're not going to do it the way you do.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're different people, right? So you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And the other thing is, we all have 1, 2, 3, 27 choice people in our lives that just drive us nuts all the time. Right? For whatever reason, they aggravate us, they anger us. And one of the things I say all the time is, tomorrow, that person has to wake up as themselves. I do not. I get to wake up as me. which I like. Somebody else might say they don't want to wake up as me, but you know, so I have to give that person grace. I mean, we have to look at what is realistically going to change. What are our expectations with change in other people? And are they realistic, right? Or do we just learn to accept them, right? And surrender to those things. But yeah, I just always feel like, let me put myself like my husband, and he listens to the podcast too. A lot of the times I drive if we go in my car because he definitely sometimes can get a little aggressive, especially on the ride home from someplace. The ride
He wants to
there,
get home.
we fold it together. I let him have the probationary drive to a place, but rarely do I let him drive
Oh, that's
home.
so funny.
And I'm always saying, like, try to think, like, what if this person in front of you was your 82-year-old dad?
Yeah.
What if it was one of our kids learning to drive? What if this person doesn't feel well, or they're crying at the wheel, or they just will never be a good driver? Like, you got to give some grace for people like that. Take a breath, right? We do a lot of breathing in our house, a lot of breathing and a lot of grace giving.
That's funny. We actually do that too. Do we call it yoga breathing? I don't know. It's funny because I can tell when Danny starts doing it, it's just the cutest thing ever. I love that. I was thinking of something. Oh, what I say that's similar to that is, would you want to live in their head?
Right.
Would you want to be in their head? And if the answer is no, then you know what? Give them some grace and move on. Or, and this is going to sound somewhat controversial maybe, if you cannot give that person grace and you find yourself really activated and negative around them, let them go.
Right.
Let them go. We talked about that a few weeks ago, June 27th to be exact, letting go. And if it's maybe you're in a situation where you can't for whatever reason, then let go of your attachment to them, or let go of your attachment to what they think, how, what they do. Like doesn't matter. None of it matters.
Yeah.
None
And
of
the
that.
other thing that I thought of when you were talking before was the concept of equity, right? Like a lot of the times with these expectations we have for other people's behaviors, we have to look at equity. Like, are they at the same place as us? Have they, been brought up in the same environments? Have they learned the same things? Do they have the same like tools or handle on their mental health that we do? Or, we have to look at that too, that not everybody's coming from the same spot. We didn't all start at the same time.
So I love that. And that brings me to a story that I would like to share that I sent out to my community. If you are not a member of my Confidence Collaborative, I'll put a link in the show notes. Weekly gems about how to boost your confidence and other tools and things that we talk about. It's fantastic. So anyway, this got a ton of return emails. I also posted it on LinkedIn, got a ton of feedback. So when I was in Israel, I was at the Western Wall, and it was a mob scene. So they separate the men and the women. So I think everybody knows what the Western Wall is. If you don't, it's a very, very, very holy place for people, mostly Jewish people, to go and pray. It's the holiest place actually in the Jewish religion, I think, to go pray. Somebody, if you want to correct me, I apologize, but I think it is. Anyway, so I was waiting my turn, and there were thousands of women. It's lines. When I was sitting there and I was taking it all in, and it was very, very, very powerful. There were women from all different cultures, all different languages, all, kind of getting ready to do their thing. And regardless of if you're religious or not, it was incredibly, incredibly memorable. So it's like a makeshift line, and I'm there, and this woman cuts right in front of me, and I'm waiting for like 30 minutes, and takes my spot, like my little 2 inches of the wall that I wanted to get to. And I was like, huh. And I was feeling so great this whole trip. And I remember thinking to myself, all right, whatever, right? Ordinarily, I would have been like, excuse me, hi, is there a reason why you think that you're more important than I am and you chose to go in front of me? Oh, you're not? Okay. But I didn't. I just let it go. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden she is racked with sobs. She is sobbing. And it's emotional already standing at this wall. And she's got her hands on the wall, and she's got a shawl on because you cover your shoulders, and she is just racked with sobs. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, so she pushed by me because she could not take another second of this pain or grief that she was in. I'm going to get emotional. And she just had to go release it and go do her what she needed to do and pray or and I was like, wow. So that 1 minute, that whatever reason that I gave her that grace, can you imagine if I had called her out and been a jerk about it? Like, come on. So she needed it. She needed it more than I did. So when someone is pushing your buttons, or if someone is, just being a schmo or whatever, you know what? They need whatever it is more than you do. You just give them the grace. And to your point, Beth, I think it was you that wrote this down. Allowing people grace is empowering. Was it you? Did you write that or did I write that? I don't remember who wrote it.
Wrote it, Nancy.
I did. I'm so gifted. It's empowering because, getting in the dirt with someone, anybody can do that. Taking a step back and being confident in yourself and your life and your feelings and your whatever, that's empowering. You have all the power. You have all the power. So give them what they need. You know what? Take it. Go. You need the last, peach at the grocery store. Go ahead. Take it. It's obviously more important to you. Right?
Yes. And so I want to go back to Israel for a second. So I was there, I don't know, 25 years ago, 26 years ago. So it's been a very long time. But I feel like Jerusalem is a place, we all know that there's all kinds of fighting and, disarray in Israel. But when you go to Jerusalem and you go to the market, there's different quarters, right? Where there's Arabs.
Yeah.
It's, and it's peaceful and they're giving each other grace so that they can be in the same place together and everybody's trying to make a living. And so that was the first thing I thought of is, that is kind of a place of grace, which is great because it is a really holy place. And I think the Western Wall too is a place where like people who live there and the people who don't know, the women and men are separated because when you're conservative or Orthodox, it's, if you go to temple or anything, the women and the men are always separated and it's a big deal. And I feel like when we go there, like, even though, we're Jews and we want to go to the Western Wall, we're tourists. And it would be very easy for you to get pushed out of the way by somebody who was like, oh, these tourists, get out of the way. This is a serious thing. So that easily could have happened to you, right?
Right.
But the thing fun fact, I'm going to go off for a second. The thing I think, the power of the wall, it's amazing because the wall is made of bricks and people write notes and stick these little notes in between the bricks. And I thought, oh, great, whatever. When you get there, you cannot believe how many pieces of paper are crammed into these bricks over hundreds of years.
Oh,
so
yeah.
People take it seriously as this really powerful place that someone would go up and be close to really sob and weep and, release something like that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of grace in that whole thing. I think it was your grace episode in Israel.
Well, there was one more and I'll tell it really quick. So we were going through the tunnels underneath the city of David. There are these caves, tunnels, water tunnels, and it's a water tunnel. So we got water shoes and we did our research and you're on like ancient rock. So you need water shoes or you do. And they say, bring a flashlight. If you don't have a flashlight, they sell them, of course. So we got flashlights, whatever. So it's long. It's like 600 meters. And the women in front of me were so incredibly slow. They were holding everybody up. It was bad, actually. And I just loved being down there, right? Like it was so cool. So I was like, whatever, I don't care, blah, blah. And then I'm like, yeah, it's not good right there. And I looked and the woman that was holding everybody up didn't have shoes. She was elderly and she didn't have a flashlight. So that's why she was holding everybody up. So instead of being like, well, why didn't she bring her shoes? And I tapped her friend who they didn't speak English. They were from the Philippines. And I said, here, and I gave her my flashlight because Danny was with me and he had a flashlight. And she was like, what do you mean? And I said, you guys need this. Take this. She can't walk here without this flashlight. Just take it. And they were like blown away that someone was actually nice to them and wasn't ripping their face off. And at the end, she gave me a big hug and where you're from and blah, 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 blah. Like this woman was like in her 70s and everybody was like, it was like a lynch mob. And I'm like, okay, everybody calm down. She didn't plan. Okay. All right. She didn't plan. So why am I going to make her life more miserable?
Exactly. Well, that was very nice of you, Nancy.
Thank you. Just call me Grace.
That's
Call me
right.
Grace. I want to be clear though. Giving people grace does not mean you get letting them get away with murder, right? It doesn't. It means just whatever. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that. And you can stand up for yourself while still allowing someone else grace. But I want to ask you, why do you think it's so easy to give grace to other people, but not to ourselves?
To ourselves. Yeah. I was just thinking about that because I was thinking about where does this come in my work and with my clients. And I don't know, but like I see people who are like, oh my God, I sent out this email with this wrong link or this misspelled thing, or I said this and not that, or, all that. And it's like, you know what? Because we're human and we make mistakes and sometimes we're rushing and we make mistakes. And it's not like you have to shut down your business that day because you misspelled something or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. We're so hard on ourselves, right? And I do feel like there are times where I can give myself grace where I'm really trying either like to get work done and it's not happening. I say to myself, you know what? I didn't sleep well, or I have a headache, or whatever. I'm like, you know what? I need to step away. I need to step away. Again, it actually goes back to what we talked about last week about energy, right? And you can try, beating a dead horse, but if the horse isn't going to get up and go, then you got to try something else. And sometimes that something else is giving yourself a little grace and saying, okay, not today. I'll try tomorrow.
Yeah. And understanding that you're not perfect and that you are human. And it could be something really big. It could be something really big. Like I made a pretty big mistake, pretty big in my personal life, epically big, actually. And like the kind of thing where you're like, oh God, I hope this doesn't really turn out bad. And I'm like, you know what? I did what I did. I'm not giving myself a pass, but I made a mistake and I'm not going to do it again. And I'll try to do better next time. That's it. Right? Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. You can't go back and change it. So.
Right. What else about grace? I'm looking at my notes really quick. So how about like, what's our call to action for the Podsters?
Our call to action for the Podsters is maybe to take some time and think about where you find yourself losing patience with people and, where can you give grace? Like, I feel like even still in restaurants and stuff or businesses that can't find the right help, it's so easy to lose your patience and get aggravated with the person you're face to face with. But they're not the messenger. They're just the person who's delivering whatever it is that, they have no control over the fact that there aren't enough people hired and the process isn't going well.
Right.
So look at those things. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about during COVID, the vid, as Beth likes to call it, I was so much more peaceful. And it's fascinating because there was literally a plague ripping through our world. And I was so peaceful. And some of it was because there were zero expectations on me, right? I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't go to work. Okay. But a lot of it was that I had so much more empathy, grace, patience, because I was just like, listen, we're all struggling. So why am I going to get torqued up about this? And it was a much better time for me. It really was. It's ironic. It's very ironic. And I'm not trivializing everything, all the horrible things that happened. It was okay. All right. So she did that. All right, fine. I'll ask her not to do it again and we'll take it from there. The end. So I would ask the Podsters if there is a person in your life that you can maybe allow a little more grace, including yourself.
Yeah.
and to make a commitment to try to do it more
Yep.
often. Cool.
Yes.
All right.
Excellent.
Excellent. Beth's new website is up and live, isn't it, Beth?
Yes, it is. And it looks fabulous.
Looks fantastic. I love it. So go check it out. That's a spade.com, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And the doors are open for my Do the Thing retreat. There comes a tipping point in everyone's life where Podsters, you know what I'm talking about, where you know this is it. You're either going to do the thing or you're not. And this is for those who are at that tipping point. You're either going to do it or you're not. And you're not going to do it on your own. So come join. There's an application actually in the show notes. Let's hop on the phone. Let's talk. I want to make sure it's a great fit for you, for me, for the other group of 9 curated people who are going to be there. It's only 9 people. So we need to make sure it's a great fit and get the tools, the resources, the support, and the innovation to do the thing. Oh, I did want to say,
Yes.
do you want to read the quote that your friend sent you, the text that your friend sent you about the podcast?
Yes.
While you're looking for it, I can tell you about one that I got.
Okay.
So my dear friend said to me, I love your podcast. I love listening to it. I toggle between you and Jay Shetty.
Whoa.
Come on.
Yes.
We're coming for you, Jay Shetty. Think like a monk. Think like
serious.
Beth and Nancy, I say.
Yes, absolutely. Holy cow.
Right?
So I got this from a friend who listens to our podcast regularly and has actually played it for her children.
Dear, does she know that we curse?
Yes.
Okay.
So I listened to Do the Thing, and then I sat down and started getting really clear on my 5-year plan to exit the industry I'm in now and go into the industry I want to be in full time. Do the thing. And she said, I can't wait for you to have a live show.
Awesome. Or maybe come to a 2.5-day workshop where she'll leave with the plan to do the thing.
Right.
Not saying, just saying.
Yeah.
All right. So we are off and running this summer. We have birthdays. We have weddings coming up. We have celebrations. We have all kinds of stuff. So grace has never been more appropriate. So we love you, Podsters. We do.
Yes.
And peace out. We'll see you next week.
That's right. May the grace be with you.
May the grace, I love that. May the grace be with you. Peace out.